All right, welcome to the first episode of the Rocket Science Podcast. This podcast is intended to be an informative podcast. Each week, my plan is each week to have different guests on, and we'll go over some different topics relating to coaching. So today, in this first episode, I am joined by Andrew Saillant and Matyson Frazier. Andrew is a coach out of Rhode Island who is the owner of Saillant Strength Systems, and Matyson Frazier is a coach out of Washington and is the owner of Frazier Strength Systems. Both of them are fantastic coaches I've been friends with for a while now. And in this first episode, we dive into a couple different topics. So we start off going over kind of our communication systems and how we like to receive information from athletes. Then we go into the types of information we're looking for from clients, post session or intra session. And then from there, we roll into troubleshooting programming, understanding the kind of the different feelings of training, how athletes might be feeling in the gym, and how we can use that to make adjustments and improvements to an athlete's programming. So if you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop a follow. This is going to be on YouTube and Spotify, so you can find us in both those locations for now. And without further ado, this is the first episode.
Oh man.
Okay, we are live.
Sweet. How are you guys? How's your day been?
I am good.
I'm also good. I just returned from work about 10 minutes ago.
Dang.
Got a little post-work snack and podcasting with the boys. Let's get into
Really,
it.
did you intentionally blur out your background?
I did. Yes.
Okay. That's cool. I was like, you got a crazy camera on that laptop.
No.
I was wondering how to set that up.
Just the three little dots next to over your camera.
Oh, I see.
Blur it.
It's too complicated for me.
Oh, here we go.
Let's go.
Three dots.
It makes you look super crisp.
All right. Well, let's get into this. Let's start off with the first topic, I guess.
Yeah.
What are you guys looking for from feedback from athletes? So, post-session updates or however you guys like to structure that. What type of information are you guys looking for from clients? Whoever wants to start.
I can go first. I'm sure Andrew will really explain things more than me in a better way. And so I would say starting out with like people when they first get started with me, like the big thing is just like a constant amount of communication. Like I really don't enjoy having clients where it's like they have days where they're like the most communicative person in the world and then it's a lull of not hearing from them from days at a time. And then so when it comes to communication standards beyond when you have kind of a baseline met, whether that is, hey, like I will message you at the end of every session or at the end of every day, however it ends up working with that specific person. I really want to make sure that obviously videos of top sets at the minimum is what I'm hoping for. If I can get more than that, I'll always take it. But some people are just filming their top sets and then getting after the rest of their workout, which I'm generally okay with unless we're trying to identify something specific on back downs. And then beyond that, I mean, I need to hear from them about how things are feeling, how they feel about how things are moving. A lot of times, and this is something I've been struggling with lately with a couple of my own lifters, is that they just will send me like 5 videos of their lifting of the day with absolutely zero comments on anything about how it felt. So like I want to go in and dissect everything, but I also have no frame of reference beyond what's on the sheet for how the day went. So when I'm looking for communication with them on a general statement when it comes to like training stuff, that's what I want. Outside of training, I don't know about you guys. It can depend on the structure. I generally am like day-to-day communication calls as needed. I usually like whenever clients want to talk, I'm good to set up a time to call. But also like if there's people we're going back and sending, 10 to 20 minutes worth of voice messages several days a week, that we probably don't need to call at the end of every week to recap on how things are going. But yeah, that's a short and sweet, what I would say communication I'm kind of looking for when it comes to clients as a baseline.
Yeah,
I would agree with all that personally.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I definitely like agree with all that. I personally like to get training check-ins post-training myself. I think that generally the feedback quality is a lot better doing that. Um, I also have I have a very specific communication expectation document that I have shared with all of my athletes. Um, and there's a set of 4 questions in there that I like people to answer. They don't have to answer all of them at every single session, but as a kind of a guideline. And those questions are: did you feel strong slash weak? Did you feel fatigued slash fresh? Did your technique feel good or bad? And what about it felt good or bad? And then if there are any external variables that are playing a significant role in your performance for the day. So I think those 4 questions kind of encompass everything you could possibly imagine in terms of like getting useful feedback from athletes. So I always make sure that that sheet is available for them to see. And if people are ever slacking, I'll kind of remind them like, check out the document, or I'll just like directly ask those questions and, be like, remember that this is the kind of feedback that I want to get. So like beyond all of that, kind of the general stuff that Matyson mentioned, um, more into the weeds, that is the kind of feedback that I like to see.
We have the exact same questions on our document. Like
Look at that,
exact
dude.
same
Great
form
minds think alike.
to a T. Um, so did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Yeah, so I have the same thing. I have a document. I have the expectations in terms of, how many videos I want. Generally, I just tell people 2 to 3 videos per lift. So, a top set and a back off, or if there's multiple top sets, both top sets, whatever the case is. But like at a bare minimum, like top sets. So similar to Matyson there. But yeah, I have the document with the 4 questions, and then I just have some kind of explanation below the 4. And then again, it's the same thing. Whatever's relevant, I'm looking for. Um, how strong someone's feeling is the big thing. Knowing like if we're coming into sessions that we want to feel strong and feeling strong, like that's a good thing. And then obviously, if things are not feeling good, I want to know that as well. Fatigue, outside variables, all that. So I think we have the exact same 4 questions. What do you guys been looking for? So like you explained your 4 questions, Matyson. What are you looking for specifically from athletes? Like what do you want them to share? What does that look like? Like
I
I said,
mean, it's pretty much exactly what you guys have been saying. Like at the end of the day, like I just need enough to know how their sessions are going and how we're feeling session to session, especially if we're trying to address issues in training, or positive trends as well. Not everything has to be negative that you're evaluating, positive trends, of course. But I was going to ask you guys, do you guys have? I know some of the other guys that we've talked, like Devin and such, he talks about with, I don't know if this is for you specifically, Jake, or if he does things differently for different clients. But the like intra-session communication, would you guys have policies on that, or is it kind of person by person, or how do you guys approach that?
so I tell athletes that generally wait till post session to get back to me, like just generally, right? And I think the biggest thing is you're going to see higher quality feedback, and you're going to see actual feedback. Like I think a lot of times people message mid session, it's something random like this set felt good, and like that's not really useful for us. Um, but it's less emotion. The quality's better. You can kind of take a step back and look at the whole workout as a scope. But I do tell people like if you do need to message me mid session or want to, you can. Um, questions or whatever, that sort of deal. But generally, I like everything after the session, all the videos, all the feedback after the session. So I can just sit down and go through it all at once.
I'm the same in that, like, I generally prefer things to be post. However, I do actually have a policy that I discuss with my clients, like on intake calls, where I do offer like um intra-session like feedback times, like, whether it be on text or if I'm available for a call, like while in the middle of the session. I do offer that because I think that it could be useful, especially like for people that um maybe have like a harder time deciphering um and like implementing cues like after the fact. They need you to like be looking at them or like responding immediately to try to figure stuff out. um so I do actually offer that service, but nobody has ever taken me up on it. And of course it depends on like if I'm available at the time that that person is training as well. There's a lot of
Yeah.
caveats that go with it, since I'm all remote. I don't do any in-person training right now.
Do you plan that? Is that like a planned thing where you have like you agree, hey, on Friday, X lifter is going to do their primary squat, and I will be available for an hour in that window, or is it like you're just responding to people whenever you're available type of deal?
Yeah, theoretically it would be like somebody has reached out to me like prior to that session, not like the day of, like a couple of days in advance, and they try to like schedule a time like, hey, this is when I'm going to be training. I would love to get feedback on this. Like in my head, it would be like about technique stuff. Like if we're really trying to work out some things that we've been struggling with on technique or something like that. Um, but yeah, like I said, it has never actually happened. I think there was one time where I had a lifter who had like a really big squat session, and he just wanted me to like be available to look at like how his last warm up was looking, and I happened to be available and I was able to. So, but other than that, I'll answer like intra-session feedback questions if it's just like simple stuff and I'm available online. Um, so yeah.
That's interesting. I've actually never heard of anyone like offering that. That's interesting. I know like Andy sent stuff in the group chat where Brad will be on like a FaceTime with him for like 30 minutes through his
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
walking through polls. But yeah, I've never heard of that. I like that though.
I've
Yeah,
never done anything as quite like Brad Couillard does with FaceTiming Andy in the middle of the
That's
session.
crazy.
But I would say quite a bit of intra training communication with clients. It's never like me reaching out and being like, hey, how's your training going? Like, what did you hit or stuff like that. But I will say, and it's usually with my younger lifters, is they just want like the constant feedback loop while they're training. Like I have a couple of people, especially like with the younger lifters who take like a couple of top singles or something like that. And like they'll hit one and then they'll send it and they'll be like, do you want me to take the same weight? Or like, do you want me to go up? And like all this stuff. And I'm like, and most of the time, it's as with you guys, if any of your clients ask you, most of the time you're going to be like, I mean, just hit it again. Like you moved it at the correct RP. Let's just do what we're supposed to do on program. But I do have a handful of those. I've started to lean into like there's a couple of clients that I have that will just like bomb me with messages throughout their session. And those clients more so, I will cool off until I think that they're either nearing the end or at the end of their session where like I'll get a message, I'll get play by plays basically from the time that they show up to the gym, how they're feeling at the gym, their top sets, their back offs, how their accessories are going. Like I'll get play by plays of the whole thing. And I just can't engage with that at, like 8 p.m. or whatever it is at the time that they're shooting me those messages.
yeah, I think I'm the same way. I have people who do reach out and like mid session where they'll send a last warm up or whatever. Like that's fine, right? Obviously, like if I'm available, I'm gonna get to that. Um, all right, we are back. Had a little Wi-Fi issue there. So just generally, like when people reach out, right? People's workouts are very much pre-planned. Most, if not all, of any RPE-based sets have some sort of weight range for the squat, bench, and deadlift. So people really won't need my help a whole lot on selecting loads, but a lot of people like to reach out for like last warm-ups on heavier sets and whatnot. So usually if I'm available, like I'm trying to get back to those. And I think there's a benefit to athlete buy-in as well. I think a lot of times as coaches, we're more likely to make the correct call on the day just because there's not as much emotional attachment as the athlete might have to a given number. And I think when, the athlete reaches out and says, hey, this or this, what should we take for the top single today or whatever, and we make that right call, that's like perfect. There's that buy-in aspect as well, similar to like meet day, attempt selection. When you make the right call, the athlete's gonna, buy into you even more, and there's just that constant belief in you now as a coach.
That is true. As someone who made the wrong call recently when someone reached out during their sessions and asked for the weight to load up, um, try to avoid doing that. But it was another problem that I do have sometimes with clients reaching out in the middle is in this very specific instance where this guy reached out and asked me about his, and he was kind of talking to me as building up because his last heavy squat of prep, and he hit a really nice last warm up. And I told him to jump to a fairly conservative. And then after the fact, he divulged to me how subpar he was feeling coming into the session, and just some other stuff like that. So Now that's something new that I have to be on the lookout for is if clients reach out to you in the middle of their session, but don't tell you that things actually aren't going well. So very, very niche problem to have, but be on the lookout, guys.
Noted.
All right. Let's kind of segue into programming troubleshooting based on athlete feedback. So we've kind of covered what we're looking for with feedback, what kind of information we want from clients, and how we want that information delivered to us. But let's say the way I like to break it down is there's usually like, I mean, you're gonna have a couple outcomes. I think Steve has made an Instagram post about this where it's like a flow chart on like athlete feedback. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Basically, starts
I have
off
as well.
are we
Yeah,
feeling
I know what you're
strong?
talking about.
What was that?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it starts off like, are we feeling strong or weak? And then from there, if the answer is yes, okay, good. If the answer is no, okay, so are we feeling, fatigued, sore, beat up, or are we feeling maybe like overly recovered? Like we're feeling recovered, but the bar's feeling heavy, technique's feeling clunky. Like those are the kind of two feelings I like to really try to understand from clients when performance maybe isn't going well. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add onto that.
Yeah, I mean, I also made a post on this. This was like one of the first Instagram posts that I made on my account at SSS Powerlifting. Shameless plug. Um, where it was like one of the first ones that actually gained some traction in the community. It got reposted by a bunch of people, including Steve, which was like a dream come true for me at the time. Um, and I kind of narrowed it down into two categories where your symptoms are, leading you to be feeling over fatigued or understimulated. And then from there, you can kind of make adjustments to things like volume, intensity, frequency, um, maybe adjusting accessories or something like that. So it depends on the symptoms is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I remember that post actually. That was my first exposure to you. That was like
Let's
when
go.
I think I probably followed you after that, but that was when I first found out about you. So,
Let's go.
and then it was months and months. No, when was that?
Dude, that must
A
have
long time ago.
been freaking maybe like February 2023 or something like that.
Dang, that was a while ago. So basically a whole
Spring
year later then.
2023. Yeah, here we are.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Madison?
I mean, not really. I mean, you are gonna see people who are gonna plateau, and then with that, you just have to ask again, kind of like we've been discussing, the right questions and just get an idea about what either we need to add, remove, or both from the program structure. A lot of it is just going to come down to the and like set progression scheme as well as the movement selection. And a lot of times, people plateau when they've either adapted super well to what you're doing and now they need to do something different, or plateau because you put in something that they're not able to adapt to. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of what you guys said and heavily going off of like just the flow chart idea of like, are you feeling like this or like this? And we can just kind of divulge from there whether people are coming in feeling strong and we need to make certain changes, or if we're coming in and feeling all over the place, we may need to make different changes. Obviously, we could probably all talk about um, specific circumstances where we've had to change things for specific people. But ultimately, a big part of that flow chart is just going to be your individual athlete and what you know about them.
So, um, I can start or someone else can start, but like what is your guys' thought process? So let's say, I mean, we can go through the two different, I guess like feelings. Someone's maybe feeling overly fatigued, overly beat up, joint soreness, pain, muscular soreness, pain, whatever the case may be. What are the first things you guys are looking to adjust within the programming?
You want to go first or me go first, Andrew?
I can go first. So I would say that if somebody's feeling overly fatigued, and I would describe like feeling overly fatigued as like if you're super sore going into sessions of like the same lift. So like if you benched on Monday, for example, your next bench day is on Wednesday, and you're still feeling super sore on the Wednesday, I would seek to reduce a little bit of stress on that Monday session. And then let's say if injuries start to pop up, like pains that are just kind of like maybe like tendinopathy kind of things, where it's just like very clearly like an overuse thing, um, then I would kind of seek to reduce like overall stress. So there would be times where you want to reduce things like at a specific point, and then kind of times where you want to reduce things overall. Um, I'll leave it there for now. Let somebody else go.
Okay. So if someone's like feeling super beat up coming into every single session, for me personally, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at their intensity exposures through the week, see what's bringing them beat up into this session. If it doesn't seem like intensity, it like on compound lifts necessarily is the issue, then I'm gonna look at the accessory movements, see if there's anything there that's really systemically fatiguing coming into the next training session. And then from there, if neither of those things I can really pinpoint anything like that, obviously you want to have a good baseline of communication, kind of what we talked about before with your clients. But some things are just going to be like, oh, my back hurts every time I come to do this. And then they're going to be like, yeah, every Wednesday at night I sleep on my couch. I don't know. You're going to have people who do weird things that cause weird things to flare up in their training that might have it not feeling great. But most of the time, if people are feeling beat up, I'm going to look at the intensity split through the week and see what we can do to better manage that fatigue, especially if it's like we're coming into a primary session and that's where they're feeling really beat up. I don't have too much of an issue, like as a general sentiment. If people come in feeling semi beat up into like a secondary or tertiary session, if we've been pushing the primary harder, then like that is normal and expected. And as all of us have competed and done lifting for a while, lifting under some fatigue and soreness isn't necessarily a bad thing. But assuming that it's impacting the trajectory of your training, then yeah, adjustments have to be made.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like I think the first thing you have to ask is, okay, is the session maybe we're feeling fatigued on? Is this a session that's okay to feel fatigued on or not okay to feel fatigued on? If I think the way most of us set days up now, we or set training up now, we have days where we're really eyeing to be strong. We're really looking to come in, feel really, really good and perform well. Generally, that's gonna, come with an indicator top set of some kind and whatnot. Um, I mean, if we're feeling fatigued on those days, there's obviously changes we probably need to make, earlier in the week or throughout the week leading into that session, in the sessions preceding. Now, if we're feeling fatigued, like you said, it's not a bad thing to feel fatigued. If you're feeling fatigued on a secondary, tertiary, quaternary day, whatever the case is, um, it might be okay to leave that alone. If the caveat is if the primary day or whatever days we're trying to have perform well are performing well, it's okay. Then we can have that performance, take a dip on the secondary day or whatever. Um, my thought process is if someone is coming in, let's just say like to make it simple here, like a 2 times a week squatter, in the primary day, they're coming in fatigued. The first thing I'm going to look at is probably volume and like the average intensity or the intensity of the back off work. And I'm going to look at that first. If volume is already pretty low, I'll probably look to maybe pull the intensity of the back down work down, just because my thought is if we pull the intensity off first, the first concern is that we might have this lifter, we might do a 180 and have them coming in way too flat. Because a lot of times people need something a little bit heavier on a secondary day. It's going to be lifter dependent. So you have to kind of, like you said, you have to know your lifter, know what they might need. Some people are going to be more sensitive to volume or intensity, but those I'd say are the two things I'm looking at first. And then from there, if volume's already maybe low, average intensity is low, but we are doing some form of a heavier topset on the secondary day, maybe I then look to pull that down. But I'd say go like volume, average intensity, peak intensity is like the tier list of which I think things generally are going to affect or induce more and more fatigue going into like a primary session. I think another thing that's often maybe overlooked is the accessory volume. That's like a means of actual training volume. So like in a bench press, if you're doing 2 or 3 additional pressing accessories a week, like that's a lot, and we might have to take a look at that and maybe pull some of that down, assuming the athlete is actually, doing their accessories.
Sure. Um, so when you guys, this just interesting, you sparked a thought for me. Um, so you're looking more at like the volume baseline intensity is kind of what you said when it comes to the compound movements. Would you guys, generally speaking, let's say someone's coming in and they are always feeling beat up, like say they bench 3 days a week and they're always coming in feeling semi beat up. Are you guys pretty much unanimously going to be looking at the tertiary day first and just bringing down that intensity? Or are you going to try and restructure all 3 days to just because there's like a blatant overall issue with bench press? Are you going to look to restructure fully? Or are you going to look to just change one day first and see? I'm only asking because I'm curious for you guys individually. I think that you could definitely get success doing either, but I'm just curious to what you guys would lend yourself towards doing first.
Me personally, if you're benching 3 days a week and you're feeling fatigued on all 3 days, or there's just a general global fatigue going on where, it's obvious the lifter's just not recovering well. I would say I would probably look at restructuring at least 2 of the days, maybe all three, bringing down some combination of volume and or intensity. Like I said, I'd probably look at volume and average intensity first, but especially with a bench press. But yeah, I would probably look at more of an overhaul in that case versus if someone's benching Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just as an example, and Friday is the primary day, and they're coming in feeling fatigued on Friday, I'd probably look at that Wednesday middle session, probably give me the tertiary day, and pulling that day back and just pulling some strings there to get the primary to show up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Andrew?
Agreed fully on my end. I think that if like I said initially, if you're always feeling beat up on every day, no matter what, and it's to the point of being too beat up that it's affecting your performance. Because like we said, it's okay to be fatigued. You probably will feel fatigued on some of your training days for sure and very consistently. But if it's to the point where it's my pecs are so sore that I can't do the work that you're prescribing, then yeah, I would definitely look to reduce overall workload, whether that be through I would probably personally go to reducing volume first because like Jake said, I think that especially with something like bench, being exposed to those higher peak intensities and absolute intensities throughout the week is important to feel trained. So in the specific circumstance of bench, I would definitely seek to reduce volume a little bit first. And then if we still find that that it remains an issue, then I would definitely look to change probably the average intensity, like Jake was saying, whether that be through increasing the rep count and bringing the absolute load down, or just doing something like a a top rep set and then percentage back downs or something like that, where you still get that hit of intensity, but then a little more sub max back down work. Um, and it all depends on the structure of the programming as well. It depends on where the secondary and tertiary days are lined up in relation to the primary day. And also the exposure timing in between them too. That could be something that you might want to mess with. Maybe adding an extra rest day in between. So like Jake said, if somebody's benching Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe pushing that primary day from Friday to Saturday could yield a positive effect.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it can just kind of stem from that as we're talking about all these ideas of changing stuff around for lifters for, I don't know, the 20 people that might watch this or the 100 people or the million people, I don't know, whoever. Obviously a lot, I think I don't know if you guys have seen this. A lot of people get very stuck in the system that they found success in with an athlete before. And as soon as something doesn't work, or let's say you had a guy who was benching in the mid 200s and then over the course of a couple of months, he's just plateaued and feels fatigue all the time. I feel like a lot of coaches who may not necessarily have been on the scene for a while, and even some who have, are just going to try to make little tweaks here and there to versus overhauling the whole thing because they're so convinced that their system is the method for this person to make progress on. If say you took them from the mid 200s to 300 and all of a sudden they're stalling, some people are just going to be like, oh, I don't know what we have to do, what's been working is working so well. And so I was just curious to get your guys' thoughts out there because I am on the same page as well. I would look at an overhaul of, at the very least, moving days around, or maybe how we're organizing primary, secondary, tertiary for a 3 day a weeker. But yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the opposite then. Someone's coming in because I think this one's interesting because there's two different directions you can go. Similar to the feeling beat up, you can go reduction of intensity, reduction of volume, but I think the feeling the opposite, where you're feeling overly recovered, bars feeling heavy, techniques feeling clunky. You can do both and have very different outcomes from both. You can increase volume, have a very different outcome, increase intensity, have a very different outcome. So what are your guys' thoughts? Let's say someone's coming into their primary, session and the bar feels heavy, performance is down, but they're not feeling beat up. They're feeling very, overly recovered.
They need more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you can go into detail if you want. I just wanted to say that.
I can take a first stab at this. There's
Yeah.
something I want to mention. For the condition of being understimulated, I think that and this is definitely the case with overstimulation as well, but more so with understimulation, you have to look at the kind of lifter that you have and the like I suppose like the demographic or the category of that particular lift. So I'm referring to things like a high arch, small range of motion bench versus like a long range of motion, no arch bench, and like a sumo deadlift, like a short range of motion sumo deadlift versus a conventional deadlift, because that I think determines the kind of stimulus that you want to add. And so, like for example, if a conventional deadlifter who deadlifts like once a week and maybe does like RDLs on a secondary day or something is feeling super flat on the primary day, um, that would definitely be a case where I would probably look to add a little bit more volume first on that day, because the conventional deadlift for that person, the kind of person who's only going to be doing it once a week, is probably pretty taxing for them. And so adding like more intensity off the bat is going to be as like a way to increase their stimulation, I think is probably going to have maybe like a negative effect, like the opposite effect that you'd be looking for. It'll just end up being too much for them to take, and they wouldn't be able to be recovered. So I would kind of look to add in kind of like some subtle volume, like maybe adding a back down set, or like doing something where you have like a top rep set and then more percentage based back downs and like adding a set there, or even adding in some more like accessory volume, like a 45-degree hyper, or increasing the volume on their RDLs or something like that. Versus where like a high arch bencher, for example, like you can probably get away with adding in more hits of higher intensity throughout the week, like maybe decreasing their top triple on the secondary day to a double or even a single, so you get that absolute load up and therefore the intensity. So I think that is a big thing to consider, especially with the understimulation scenario.
Yeah. I think and it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And obviously, like, Chris made a post about it in relations to meat, but like the idea of like priming people for lifts if they're coming in flat, I mean, which is really just kind of what you're talking about, getting them the exposure that they need to come in and not feel flat, either that the movement pattern feels refined or like muscularly and structurally they feel capable of moving the weight on whatever lift that it is. And I think it's obviously, aside from the volume component, it's where we get a lot of the value of secondary, tertiary, quaternary sessions as we go into lifting, is just how they stack up in terms of prepping you for coming into a day where you don't want to feel flat. You want to feel ready to move some weight. Um, but I mean, you kind of, I would say, hit the nail on the head in terms of like, you can adjust volume, you could add an extra triple or a single or something along those lines to give you that stimulus that you need. Case by case, like you said, different people, like demographics of lifters in terms of both their leverages, but also just like, a super heavyweight guy versus a 52-kilo woman are going to need a lot different types of exposure in order to bring them feeling good into a session. What might work for her is giving her a fifth bench day, and what might work for him is just sticking with 2 bench days and adding an extra single, and that might be all that he needs. So it's like just super different for each lifter, like you said, Andrew. But ultimately, I mean, what we need to do is just get them enough stimulus through some action, and it, again, different per person, different for different kind of lifts. But we need to get them enough stimulus so that they feel primed coming into the session and capable.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think the one thing that you started to get at, Andrew, was like taking a step back and looking at like, okay, what does the athlete need? It's going to be lift dependent. Um, what I like to usually do is I like to look at the microcycle as a whole and look at volume and intensity and where those are in relation to their demographics. So if we look at like a middleweight male, for example, like an 82.5 kilo male, and they're coming in flat on the primary squat, looking at that secondary day or primary day, both days, and looking, okay, what does this look like comparative to other lifters I've coached in this demographic? What does this look like comparative to, other lifters I know of who are in this demographic? Maybe I don't coach them, but I know what their training looks like. What the volume and intensity looks like. If someone's volume is very low, but the intensity is kind of already high, the first thing I might look to do is probably let's add a set to the secondary day. Let's just look at adding a set, adding a little bit of accessory work, whatever, versus the opposite where if someone's volume is already very high, but like the secondary day is very easy, very light, maybe it's 4 or 5 total sets though, I'll probably look to add some form of a top set or something. Single, double, triple, set of 4, set of 5, something where we're pushing the load and chasing load a little bit more to get that stimulus. But again, like I also think, it's really tough to decipher feedback super accurately sometimes, but the things I like to look at is, okay, if the bar is feeling heavy and we know intensity is not there, the first thing I think of is we need to get some more intensity in on the back or in the hands for like a squat or a bench, for example, versus and Devin's talked about this in our group chats and stuff, but if someone's feels clunky and awkward, I think sometimes the answer is intensity, but I think more often sometimes it's more reps, more higher rep sets or whatever. We found with myself, my primary bench day for a while was just coming in very kind of clunky. I just didn't feel super well practiced, but the weights weren't feeling heavy. Just didn't feel like I could stick my pauses like I wanted to and whatnot. And the biggest change we made was we put just like a 2x8 on the Thursday, come into Saturday, and I feel amazing. I just felt like I could really grease the groove a lot. I think that's going to be lifter dependent though. We're not going to want to give a, super long arm, long range of motion bencher, a couple sets of 8 when, for technique practice purpose, I would say maybe, volume purposes, we might want that. Or like a, long femur, very folded over hingy squatter. We're probably not going to give them 8s to prime the technique because the technique's not going to, really hold up for all 8 reps, I would say. So I think it's, again, gonna be lifter dependent, but I think a lot of times you can take a step back, look at the program, determine where are they at within the confines of their demographic generally, and then that's going to give you a good first, first step.
Yeah. And some of it, I just to add one last thing, when it comes to this, I've also just found that while we are talking about compound lifts in as squat, mentioned, deadlift primarily, you can definitely achieve a similar level for some people who seem to be pretty sensitive to changes in their program. I found just through the accessory work itself. You can definitely make, I mean, you guys touched on this some, but like you can definitely make significant changes to how someone feels coming into a program just through changing 1 or 2 accessories and like the sessions prior to coming into the primary.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Accessory volume is training volume. I think it's sometimes often overlooked. People don't look at someone's like bench press volume and take into account sometimes the chest press machine they're doing, or the dumbbell bench, or the weighted push-ups, or the weighted dips, or the pec flies even, or the tricep work. And all that workload does contribute to stress and does contribute to stimulus in some manner. So like if someone, is coming in really flat and they do 0 additional pressing work, maybe throw in some dumbbell bench on the secondary day and see what happens. I think that's a good direction to take things too.
Yeah.
Just real quick to add on to that, I think that there could be a lot of merit too to just like assuming that somebody has accessories in, like switching out exercise selection too can have a big difference. Like if somebody's has weighted dips as like their primary accessory for bench, switching that out to like a flat dumbbell or incline dumbbell or something like that could reduce some of the stress if you're feeling like overstressed, or switching it the opposite way and adding in some dips could be a good way to get some more tricep volume in and have you feeling a little bit more prepared for like a close grip bencher or something like that. So I think not only just looking at accessory like volume and workload as a whole, but the actual exercise selection too, I think is important to take note of.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, here's another little quick segue. Do you guys have like a so a lot of us probably have like our favorite accessories we like to program. Do you guys ever like tier it in terms of like how much stress something induces? Like the way I look at it is like belt squat's going to be very specific. Probably, I mean, I shouldn't say it's always going to induce more stress than, other movements, but I think in general, like that's going to induce very specific stress. You're in the same stance as you squat in, and you're moving through the exact same range of motion. The stimulus is the exact same. There's just no axial loading. Versus then I would say after that it goes probably leg press, depending on how you set it up, but leg press, then hack squat, then something like a Bulgarian split squat. I like Bulgarian split squats a lot. Unfortunately for my clients, I like that a lot. And then leg extensions, probably like the bottom tier in terms of stress, where like I can just kind of plug that in for just a hypertrophy slot, knowing it's not really going to induce fatigue. You guys ever think about things in that way?
100%.
Yeah, I would say that I do think about it, but a lot of the time, um, it's going to be the idea of like removing or changing some of those things is going to be pretty dependent on the feedback that the lifter gives related to those accessories. Because if they don't say anything to me about how that, like, if there's like, good, I'm hitting the RPE and everything feels good. I mean, I'm just going to assume that that's the amount of stimulus that we want, unless training trends are going poorly and I need to reassess it. But the stress allocation, like I have a client right now who, for some, like his upper back and traps are just getting fried from the workload that we're doing. So we're going through ways to try to figure out how to address that currently and what's causing the highest amount of fatigue for him on his training days. But also for him, like the workload that he does compared to some, like even just what I can tolerate for like my upper back and traps and stuff like that is a night and day difference. Like he has like no tolerance. And I have always felt like upper back and traps I can push probably 4 days a week and be okay.
Dude, I'm the same. Devin has me
I'm
doing
also the
a lot
same.
of rows right now, like a lot of rows, a lot of pull downs. I never feel sore ever, and I go ham on them too. Like I'll go, I'll hit my AMRAPs and I'll go to RP 9 or 10, whatever it's prescribed to. But yeah, I never feel beat up. Like my lats never feel sore. My upper back never feels sore. So
My upper back is never sore. Sometimes I'll get sore in my lats if like Matt introduced to me like a single arm pull around. In the first couple of weeks that I was doing those, my lats were torched, unbelievably sore. But like now that I've gotten used to them, it's better. And like sometimes that'll happen whenever like we introduce something new for lats or something like that. But my upper back, like I feel like I can take
I've added in
infinite volume on upper
I've
back
added in
specifically.
so many back accessories for myself over my training powerlifting career. Is like I'll get a block and there'll only be like two back movements and I'll be like, I can handle more. Give it to me. I want the biggest back that I can get.
Yes, yes. But going back to what Jake was saying, I definitely have like a kind of like a categorization of accessories in my head. I don't have this like written down anywhere. I think I should do that actually. But like I have a kind of like a double-sided list, right? There's the specificity side and then like the fatiguing, taxing side. So like for squat, like Jake was saying, like to me, hack squats super specific to squat and super high fatiguing. So that is something that I would program like on a primary squat day, um, focusing like on intensity, lesser on the volume side, just because it's so fatiguing. Um, and then like on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, like a pec fly or something like that is like super not specific. It's not very fatiguing. That is something you can kind of like hammer on the volume, the intensity, and that would be used more for like a bodybuilding purpose rather than like trying to carry over directly to the competition lift. Where in the context of bench, again, I would go for something like a dumbbell press, a weighted dip, an incline bench, even machine press is like has more carryover to the bench than I would say like a fly, obviously, because it's the same
Yeah.
pressing motion. But like I definitely have like all of the accessories that I program. Like my whole library is in my head, categorized into different like yeah. I should write it down.
If there's one thing that I feel like I've really discovered from powerlifting coaches all around is we have a lot in our head that we should be putting down on paper.
Yes, yes.
dude, I used to be insane about writing stuff down, like insane about it. Like I used to work at a retail store and I would like sneak away and like start like fucking taking notes in my head about like random stuff. Like the one I remember is like I was taking notes on like different like pacing schemes across a block like 2 years ago, like before Rocket, everything. And I was like taking notes like diligently about like random stuff that would come in my head. Um, I don't do that as much anymore just because I feel like the note taking is actually working with clients, if that makes sense. Like what, I'm writing more blocks now than I was 2.5 years ago when I had like two clients. So, um, there's more experimenting going on. But yeah,
And
I used to take a ton of random like schizophrenic type notes, like just random stuff.
it's okay. That's what the council's for now. You just put those thoughts in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I was saying the other day we were talking about like content creation, and I said in the chat, like, I have this document in my Google Drive, like my coaching drive, that is like easily like 2 to 3 pages long, just like bulleted lists of like content ideas of like, it is just like a lot of the times just like random stuff I think of, and I have to write it down, and then I'll not look at it for like weeks or months on end, and then I was gonna make a post on that, and I'll get back and like make a whole post about it, and it's just like this
Good
ongoing
on you,
list
man.
of.
Good on you. I suck at that stuff.
Yeah, I'm okay. But I definitely don't have a full document. I have maybe like six ideas in my head, but definitely not like a full.
I think the fullest list I ever made is when me and Devin were gonna work on a post together, and I had like 3 or 4 ideas that I did, and he was like, "I like that one." I was like, "Okay." I don't even know where that list is anymore. 3 perfectly good ideas on that piece of paper that I haven't used.
Dude, you gotta find it. You gotta find it.
I do.
I need to make a list for topics for this, for the podcast, because I have one right now where I want to do it with Eric specifically. But otherwise I need to get some ideas because I kind of want people to pick and choose what they, are interested in talking about, but I need to just have a list I can just send out and let people pick. So
Good
Yeah.
idea.
I mean, you'll be able to do whatever you want to, and you'll figure out what the best flow of everything is.
yeah. So all right, we've been going now for almost an hour, I think about 50 minutes. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add last second?
Um, in regards to this specifically,
Yeah.
I'm okay. I was just gonna try
I'm
to
good.
get you riled up about Breaking Bad.
Breaking
Uh-oh.
Bad.
Uh-oh. What are we saying? What are we saying?
It's nothing. Breaking Bad is very, very good. I just think it's a little overhyped.
I've never seen it.
My
So
heart.
I've
My
never seen it.
heart.
Okay, that can be you can on you can
Jake will be the
podcast
tiebreaker.
yourself. You can podcast yourself watching every episode of Breaking Bad and giving it a score, and then every episode of Ozark and giving it a score.
I've heard Breaking Bad's really good. I have a friend who watched
Yeah.
that and all of Better Call Saul, and he said it's really good, but never seen it. So
We'll have to reunite in like 7 months when Jake finishes Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. We'll reunite on a podcast, and we'll get like a
Well,
not about powerlifting at all. Just be like the
just
tiebreaker.
yeah.
Is Breaking Bad good or not?
Well, here's a question. We don't have to talk about it anymore after this, but I do want to know, what did you think, or did you watch El Camino?
I thought El Camino was very good.
I also thought El Camino was very good. I thought it was a
Very
good.
good movie.
I thought it was a good way to close out that guy's story.
Yes, for sure.
all
I
right.
gotta rewatch El Camino. I rewatched Breaking Bad recently. I gotta hit El Camino again too. Anyway,
I'll have to get to watching so I can know what's up. So
What are you? I'm just spitballing now. What are you watching right now, Jake?
dude, I'm
Or do
trying
you
to get through.
watch?
What was that?
I said, or do you watch shows? Because some people just don't. Some people don't watch anything.
I don't watch a ton of shows really. The only shows I really get into are the Star Wars shows that they drop. Usually I'm disappointed in them, but
Have you watched Acolyte yet?
I've watched the first three. It's okay. I think
I
it's getting
haven't.
too much
I
hate.
haven't watched. I haven't watched anything of it.
Yeah, I think it's getting more hate than it probably deserves. Like, is it amazing so far? No, but we're 3 episodes in. But is it the worst thing ever? Like, absolutely not. And I think people should give it a chance. But it's not like incredible. There's some stuff I'm not a fan of, like stuff they have done, but like it's it's very early in the show, and it's evident that like some of these loose ends and stuff are gonna come back into play. They're gonna tie 'em up. So I don't know. It's getting way overhated. It's a
I,
solid like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 so far.
I've been a very big Star Wars fan, and during like the upswing of all the Marvel stuff, I was very into all the Marvel as well. But since like Endgame and stuff, I haven't been into Marvel much at all. And like every Star Wars project that I've watched in the last like 10 years has been pretty 50-50 for me. So I've started watching Marvel and Star Wars less and just going and watching other stuff that I feel like is going to be more predictably good.
I think you described it well. 50-50 is how I would describe Disney's takeover of Star Wars. Half of it's not good and half of it is absolutely incredible. And
Did you watch Andor?
I did. I loved Andor.
Andor is
That was arguably the best content Disney has put out with Star Wars, arguably. Aside
gives
from
Breaking Bad a real run for its money.
it's Andor's good. I love it. I love it. It's really good.
I'm kidding, but it
That is
probably,
a take.
in my opinion, it's probably the most consistent. It's just one season, but it's probably the most consistent quality of any episode of any Star Wars show ever. That's what I will say about it.
Yeah. I love Andor.
It's just consistently good.
To anyone out there, watch Andor. You don't even have to be a Star Wars fan. I think you could probably watch the show and enjoy it without knowing much about Star Wars anyways. So
Yeah, you don't have to know anything.
all right. Well, where can we find you guys? Links, Instagrams. Who wants to go?
My Instagram is at SSS Powerlifting. That's where you can find me. My personal page is linked through there. I'm not going to do that because I have to spell my last name, but at SSS Powerlifting, that's me.
You can find me at Frazier Strength Systems on Instagram. My personal is just my first name, Matyson.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That'll be it for this episode.
Thanks for having
Great
us on.
pleasure. Thank you.